Greetings, friends and community. I want you to know that I endorse Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president 100%. And here's why. First, partly personal and partly principle. My father was heavily involved with the Democratic Party in the 60s, and he was also involved with the Civil Rights Movement. And he worked with leaders in the Civil Rights Movement several times. He worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. several times and other leaders. He at times worked with Bobby Kennedy Sr. And this whole era was full of dreamers who had a vision for how beautiful this world could be and how beautiful this country could be. And they put their lives on the line for that vision. And it was such a strong vibration that it influenced the Democratic Party, and many of the civil rights leaders began to work with the Democratic Party. And part and parcel of this whole movement and the civil rights era and its involvement with the Democratic Party, part and parcel of that was Bobby Kennedy Sr. He was there for that, and he was talking and working with a lot of the civil rights leaders. And he was influenced by the heart of that time, by the spirit of that time, to the degree that when he ran for president, he based his whole campaign reaching out to the poor and the marginalized. I grew up in Detroit. When Bobby Kennedy went to Detroit to campaign, he campaigned in the hood of Detroit. He went to 12th Street in Detroit. That's the hood. And he campaigned in the hood. Very few politicians do that from city to city. And that's Bobby Kennedy in the 60s. So fast forward today, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his son, is running for president. I hear my own father telling me that's who to vote for. But it also has to do with the Democratic Party and the principles, because we're in a crisis state right now with the fact that the Democratic Party has done an about-face from those principles of the Civil Rights era. The Democratic Party of today has become the party of medical mandates and authoritarian control. And it's a crisis. It really is a crisis. And so we have an opportunity to be able to restore the principles of the Democratic Party here. We have someone who is really charged with that energy of the principles, the ideals, the highest ideals of the Democratic Party. And, this is about civil rights. It still is about civil rights, and it is about civil liberties too, civil rights and civil liberties. And our number one civil right and civil liberty is bodily autonomy. Without that, there's no other civil right. And a lot of us that are in this movement for bodily autonomy, this medical freedom, this health freedom, the civil liberty movement, we've been fighting for this, and we've been on the line, and we're willing to risk whatever it takes, the job, the communities, connections, whatever. We are willing to risk that to step forward for this principle of bodily autonomy for ourselves, for our friends, and for the next generation. And who's been fighting with us, for us, all along and before, for that? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And, perhaps the greatest threat to civil liberties and civil rights is corporate capture. When corporations capture the government, when they capture the media, when propaganda becomes the commonplace, this is the greatest threat to civil liberties. And who's been fighting corporate capture for several decades now? Again, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So, yes, I endorse Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president. This is a great time for politics. And I had the opportunity to meet him a few weeks ago, and I wanted to tell him that my father had worked for his father. And when I got to tell him, I saw a real heart and soul there, a real heartfelt person. And that's a lot for me, because A lot of times when I meet people who are in that political level, that international political level, I oftentimes feel that hustler vibe, you know, that aloof hustler vibe. But that wasn't there with RFK, a real heartfelt person. So I'm happy to say that I endorse RFK Jr. for president 100%. One love.